It's Mark Crilley. I'm back with another How to Draw video. Today we're going to be learning how to draw a dog. Of course, there's so many different breeds of dogs, so you have to just settle on one. I decided to choose a collie. That's the kind of dog we're going to be drawing today. So this is a circle here. It's about 4 inches in diameter for those of you who want to follow along. I'm going to go ahead and put down some basic guidelines in time-lapse, and then we'll be back to get a little further on in the drawing. All right, well, we've got some good basic guidelines in place here. I'm going to add just a couple of more guidelines again in time-lapse, and then we're going to be good to go. I'm going to add some lines here to show a pattern in the fur, and then just a couple of teeth down here. Okay, well, I said I was going to stop with the teeth, but I decided to add in one extra line here for the tongue, and that's it for the guidelines. I'm going to go ahead and start moving on to, I'd say just the sort of midway details, if such a term exists. In drawing a collie, of course, one of the big things is getting the fur right, and especially toward the end of this video, I'm going to be dedicating lots and lots of time to drawing the fur. But for now, I'm going to be sort of just getting some rough lines in place and talking about the direction that the fur flows in, and especially the length of the fur in different areas of the face. And some of you may have seen the video that I did a while back on a wolf, the face of a wolf, and there's actually a fair number of similarities in terms of the direction of the fur and so forth. They must be related, huh, at some point? In any case, I'm adding some fairly long tufts of fur that come off the top of the ears. And, I just sort of made a decision to draw the collie with the ears flopping down instead of pointing straight up, I suppose, to differentiate this lesson a little bit from that wolf one as much as I could. But what I got a little confused in as I studied different photographs was the coloration of the ears, and it seems like different breeds have different colors. One photograph I studied with the ears flopping down, the fur on top of the ear appeared quite light in color with more darkness underneath. But those of you who own collies, let me have a look at your collie's ears and see if the upper edge of it gets real dark. That's the one thing I'm not super sure about in this lesson, whether it's more typical for those ears to be dark on the upper edge or light. Or maybe it just depends on which dog you have. Anyway, let's move on to at least getting a little more of the fur in place. Now, I saw at least one photograph where the fur at the very top here of the forehead was not super long, creating a nice little clean contour there. But of course, as you go off to the sides of the head, that's where you're really going to start to see longer and longer fur flowing off from the head. And conveniently, it sort of follows along the edge of the circle right here. At least these two parts of it do. And over here, we're going to see super long tufts of fur. But notice the directional change that I'm putting in here. It's sort of flowing down and to the left all along here. These are all just rough guidelines, and I'm going to sort of polish this as I go along toward the end of it. But then notice the change in direction here. It starts to go straight out and then actually joins with this hair at the base of the ears, which is curving upwards. So that's a little tip on getting the basic direction of the fur in that part of the head correct. And later on, we're going to be talking a lot about sort of the balance of black and white in drawing a collie. I found that became a real definitive attribute, getting those darks and lights in the right place. And then over here where you see this long straight line, that line is a fiction. There is no clean straight line like that on a collie, no way. The fur becomes very long. It's flowing out in this area, but I just put a basic guideline there to get me started. And yeah, like I keep saying, I'm going to be coming in and refining this as I go. This is just sort of getting us started. Now, where the hair of the fur gets very short is right along the top of the snout here, and I'm just going to put in some little dashes to give you some sense of the direction of that. It seems to be following north-south. The top of the head is north, and the snout is south. These furs are going north-south in this area. Very, very short, very, very small. And then they begin to flow outwards. There's an area here beneath the eyes that I'll be getting into. And maybe I'll refocus the camera before I start really getting to the fur of that area, because it sort of flows in lots of different directions there. But suffice to say, you're going to have lots of very short hairs that begin to fan out here across the snout of the dog. Hope I'm getting the right terminology there. It would be the first time in the history of my videos if I were to get the right terminology. Anyway, this is all going to be coming across like so, and then right around here, beneath the eye, coming over to this side of the mouth, that's when it really starts to lengthen out pretty dramatically, getting over to this side. The west side, north-south. The west side of the face is where the hair, the fur really starts to lengthen considerably. Now, let me sort of refocus the camera, because we're going to get into the open mouth here. This is another part that's going to differentiate this video from that wolf video, because the wolf had the mouth closed, as I recall, or largely closed anyway. And this collie has the mouth fairly wide open, and so we're going to see a bunch of the teeth and so forth. So hang on a second, I'm going to refocus the camera. So let's go ahead and draw these teeth here. I guess we have some quite large teeth toward the back. Are they wisdom teeth? I'm not sure. They're very large, though, back here. And then what I found interesting was after a couple of sort of sharp teeth back here, there was a gap. I noticed quite a gap between here and between this these two really quite big sharp teeth at the bottom. Quite a gap in there. Again, look at your own collies if you have one and let me know if I'm wrong about that. But I was surprised to find that it was not a steady, continuous row of teeth that went all the way, sort of divided into two groups. And down here I was really surprised as I studied photographs that these teeth, there's like 4 teeth down here at the bottom that really point outward. They really jut outward, or in an entirely different direction from these teeth. And again, maybe there's some canine experts out there that will explain why these teeth assist the dog in chewing, or whatever it assists the dog in doing. But I thought it was sort of interesting that you had different directions, and these, certainly compared to human teeth, really seem to be pointing outward in a fairly dramatic way. Now this line down here, I guess we would call it the gums, sort of breaks into a couple little sections down here. It's very clean, the very clean line right down there. There's sort of a disruption in the line right there, and then it gets very clean again. I don't know why clean. What, do they use detergent? It just, the line seems very clear to me, let's put it that way, as it curves around the edge here. Now the fur coming across the snoutal region is very, very short. And we're coming up here to the nose. I guess I might as well get into that. This is going to be largely concealed by darkness, this nose, but just as I saw with the wolf, you have the big nostril area out here toward the front, but then it cuts around to the side. Maybe, as I think I read in the comments section, people educating me that the shape of nostril allowed them to, obtain a scent from all different directions, or something like that. I'm going to pretend I know what I'm talking about. The same guy who just used the term snoutal region. Let's move on. Oh, I tried to do this so that we could see the eyes as well. Sometimes you get little, almost like whitish eyelash looking fur right there above this eye. But I noticed the sort of almond shape of the eye, and that there is, of course, the eye itself is kind of circular back here. Although this all gets darkened in quite a lot. It's not super clear. And then what we would call the tear duct on a human is taking up a fairly large area over here. Now, one thing I wanted to talk about, and I'm going to go ahead and erase my circular guideline here. Studying a photograph of one of these collies, I was struck at how there seemed to be a fairly regular pattern in these dots, almost like wallpaper or something. That these are not randomly distributed across the snout. They seem to line up. And again, I'm not super sure what the purpose of them are, but the whiskers seem to be emanating one per dot from these areas. Again, this is not final line work, but maybe just to give you some initial sense of the direction of these whiskers. Quite dark in this area here, kind of shortening up and lightening up as it comes along the front. And that might, boy, I feel like, oh, the tongue, I haven't really talked about that. The tongue, of course, is back behind these larger teeth, and it comes to a bit of a tip here. I considered doing a drawing of a dog with the tongue really hanging out, you know, and the saliva dripping down, but I thought, now let's keep that tongue inside the mouth a little bit. It sounds so much cuter in your mind, the idea of a dog with the tongue hanging out, than you actually look at photographs, and well, I guess some of them look cute, but the other ones look like, boy, that dog looks tired or something. Like, you need a rest. Anyway, I think that kind of sets us up for these basic details. Oh, I guess I should just talk about how here at the bottom of the jaw, super short fur, very close to the skin before, again, it starts to flow outward. Now, I think I've got most of these basic details. I'm going to refocus the camera. I'm going to try to do this next section real time, but a lot of the refining work, I must warn you, in this video is going to be time-lapse. I don't want to do a super long video, and it hasn't been that long since I did the no time-lapse thing, so I feel like I bought myself the right to do a video with plenty of time-lapse in it, and it's going to come in mainly at the end. But let's go ahead and do this next part as much real-time as I can. Okay, so I wanted to talk about the distribution of lights and darks, and I found as I studied various photographs, there was a pretty consistent pattern from one collie to the next, with darkness occurring right here outside of this eye, very often attached in a way to the eye itself, which, you know, it looks kind of spooky because it's all dark or white right now, but it's going to get darkened in. But there's this pattern where there's a little bit of a line that comes across here, and then quite a decisive area of darkness here. Now, this is, again, very sketchy. Just sort of want to show you the basic pattern here. This is not going to be the final thing. And then let's talk a little bit about the direction of the fur, curving down right here, beginning to kind of straighten out or sort of go horizontal, east-west. It's like the global metaphor. The dog's head is like the globe of the entire earth. Anyway, the fur begins to fan out, following the skull beneath, and comes to kind of a north-south pattern. I don't know if it's a pattern, but anyway, I want you to focus on both the direction and the lights and darks here. The direction of the fur is curving and eventually sort of reversing course and beginning to flow in this opposite direction over here. But note that there's a fairly pale area here above the eye, all surrounding the eye. And depending on the breed, you're going to get different sort of patterns. Lassie, I noticed, and I may try to reproduce this in this drawing, has a white stripe going right across the snout. But yeah, I found in order to, and people may look at this and say, boy, that doesn't look like a collie to me. And it doesn't look like a collie to me much either, because I found that a lot of it really seemed to come into it during the polishing phase. But if you haven't got a sense of where the darks and lights go at the start, you're going to be in trouble for really getting this, drawing to look like a collie toward the end. I was surprised how much of it seemed to depend on the lights and darks and getting that pattern right. I'm darkening in here to a degree this area of the gums, and I was struck at how jet black the gums of a collie are, and I suppose a great number of dogs. Maybe I just haven't paid attention over the years, but anyway, collie certainly just like inky black gums down here. And the other area that I'm going to be darkening in a fair amount is underneath the ears. Like I said, when the ears are standing straight up, the underside of the ear seems pretty decisively black in a lot of the photos I saw. What I remain a little confused about is when they're flopping down, as I said at the beginning, whether the upper edge here goes black or white. I confess, as an artist, I decided let's make it white so that there's contrast between the top and the bottom, so that it's almost more of an artistic choice rather than focusing on the dog breed choice. And for me, making these ears flop down and having the top be light and the bottom be dark. But I think we're kind of getting down to where I'm going to have to start kicking things into the ever-loving time-lapse and go into the polishing phase. How about if we do it this way? I'm going to do a lot of time-lapse right now, in which I begin to refine the fur, but I'm going to have a little bit of a break in the middle where I stop and sort of talk about what happened during all that crazy time-lapse. And then we'll have a second time-lapse session in which we really go to final. So let's go ahead for part one of the time-lapse shading session. All right, so we're making progress here, kind of refining things. I thought I'd come in for my little halftime show here to give you two different tips. One of them is that I'm doing a lot of shading this time with the side of my pencil. The theory being that when I look at a collie, I'm struck by the sort of fluffiness, the smoothness, and when you use the tip of the pencil and start going like this, you start conveying roughness in the fur, and that would work very nicely, I suppose, for like the wolf one, you know, if you want that sort of tough-looking fur. But I'm trying to go for a soft focus kind of an effect here, so I'm doing a lot of this side of the pencil lead shading in this illustration. And the other thing is that a fair amount of my drawing, in a way, is being done with the eraser. I put some tone down, and then I go in with my eraser to suggest a tuft of white fur coming here in front. Of course, that involves a little bit of preparation and back and forth. You know, you get some dark tone with an eye toward erasing it, and it can be a pretty effective way of conveying fur. And you find that you are, you know, quite literally drawing with your eraser. So those are a couple of little tips there about this refining phase. I'm going to go ahead and pull out the trusty black Prismacolor to start really darkening in some of these darks. Basically, you're going to see the eyes go quite dark, the nose, and like I said, the lips get incredibly dark, and basically some of these extremities of the fur. But I'm also going to be coming back in with my Dixon Ticonderoga to continually refine this fur. A lot's going to take place here, all in time-lapse. My apologies. But hopefully I've given you a couple of tips that help you understand how we're going to get to this final point. So let's go ahead and finish this drawing. Alright, well, there's my video on how to draw a dog. Of course, every breed is different, and I'm sure I'm going to have to do other breeds in future videos. But for now,